Hi, I'm Joe Justice. Welcome to Executive-Led Agile and Digital Transformation. I'm at one of the most famous racetracks in the United States, Willow Springs Raceway, and I'm inside a race car. And I'm outside the factory site in progress for Team WIKISPEED. Team WIKISPEED is building our next mega factory here at the racetrack. We've found co-locating production with test gives the fastest feedback loop. And for race cars, you want a racetrack. So for me, this is heaven. I'm Joe Justice. I'm the author of the Scrum Hardware Guide. I'm the chair of the Agile Business Institute, and I'm the creator of the Extreme Manufacturing Methods. I can sum up my approach to Agile transformation with morale multiplies velocity. If we're not growing, we're dying. An extra large project is really 18 extra small projects waiting for modular architecture. With these three truisms, we're able to make some interesting gains in executive-led Agile transformation. My approach has been written up in Forbes 5 times. Harvard Business Review has published on my methods and my clients more than 4 times. I've been interviewed by CNN Money and CNN Fortune. I've had the opportunity to give a TEDx video, been on the Discovery Channel. I've been interviewed on Good Morning America, USA Today, Fox News, and in Japan, the main media there, the Asahi Shimbun and the Nikkei. And at the bottom right, you see a picture of me without my shirt on. The reason I think this is worth putting in a business presentation is I've had health wishes my whole life. I was born legally blind and was very clumsy for a long time. And with a series of eye surgeries and eye exercises over many years, now I can see pretty well. And I've had to learn to use my body again as an adult, or really the first time, and was not in shape, was not fit, was not athletic for all of my childhood, at least I felt, and my adulthood. I finally put a backlog of what I wanted to do to achieve some life goals for me. One of them was fitness and how I wanted to be physically. And I used this same approach to that. And for me, it worked. And I'm so happy about that, that I want to say, look, I was able to even use the same approach. I had a backlog, prioritized it by business value. I had a Scrum Master help me remove impediments to get it done faster. I did weekly retrospectives, made short feedback loops. That way I could learn what really worked for me. And it was no given everyone fits all plan, but I got the physical presence I wanted. And maybe that's inspiring to some other people too. And I achieved other goals too, but you can see the fitness one there. You may have seen the TEDx talk I gave. That was all the way back in 2011. That was on Agile hardware and what WIKISPEED did building cars in 1 week and still does. And I'd like to share an update to that. You may have seen me on primetime news globally. I'd like to talk about opportunities executive teams embraced at Bosch, Toyota, Siemens, and others while leading their Agile transformations. Here's the context. These are actual quotations from these companies' real chief executive officers. Volkmar Denner is the chair and CEO of all of Bosch, more than 300,000 people. And here's what he says. For Bosch, agility is crucial. It allows us to adjust to the speed of to the increasing speed of change around us. Agility allows us to remain in a position as an innovation leader. It's about speed of change for Volkmar Denner. And I got to work directly with Volkmar Denner. Akio Toyoda, CEO of Toyota Global, when you look at a product going to the actual sites, going to the Gemba, the Japanese word for the place the work actually happens, what is important is to fuel the change point. For Akio Toyoda, what's important is to speed up change. Herbert Diess, CEO of the entire Volkswagen Group, including Porsche, including Bentley, including MAN Truck and Bus, including Skoda. The big question is, are we fast enough? If we continue at our current speed, it is going to be very tough. Speed of execution is the top priority, according to Herbert Diess. Elon Musk is CEO of Tesla, which is the fastest growing by financial assessments car company on the planet. and off the planet. They have a car past Mars now. Pace of innovation is all that matters in the long run. I think you can see a common thread. Speed of execution is the #1 name of the game at the top level of all of these companies for their Agile initiatives and for the company, period. And that's why they have Agile change initiatives. And then COVID happened, and these companies were heavily financially disrupted. Volkswagen said sales are down 15 to 20%. Geely, who owns Volvo, had to lay off 1,300 people at the beginning of COVID, and they don't know when, if it's going to get better. Ford is down $2 billion in the US dollars in the first quarter alone, blaming coronavirus. You can see their stock price crash in the center of the screen at the bottom. And Ford is a global company. You can see where their market base and supply chain is affected at the bottom right. We don't know when or if there'll be a second wave, and when or if what that will be like. What this means for businesses is these businesses are preparing in case there's a second wave and for many different scenarios. And what we're seeing is an enhanced speed of change. These companies are changing, they're changing globally, and they're seizing the crisis to figure out how to execute really quickly. In a crisis, you don't have time for a 2-year project. And in most of the companies I've been talking about, a minor model change, like changing the way a bumper looks, would be the most visible part of one of these changes, is a 2.5 to 4-year project. That's business as usual. But what we've seen triggered by COVID-19 is companies building new hospitals in 3 weeks. Now, interestingly, when companies build hospitals in 3 weeks, they use the same practices hardware teams do to build software continuously in less than 3 weeks, sometimes multiple times a day. They use small modules with repeatable interfaces. They design them with the interface first. They test as they build, so they don't have batch failure at the end by testing at the end. They do test-driven development, and they do it in teams that are able to make their own approvals in team. They have the supervisors or approvals in teams so they can make decisions as they go without waiting on decisions outside of the team. And we're seeing hospitals built in 3 weeks. The practices that make this work in hardware, that's called extreme manufacturing. And you can read that in Paulo Samichelli's book, Scrum for Hardware, and Peter Stevens' book, Extreme Manufacturing. During COVID-19, we saw companies with 2.5-year-long projects switch to 3-week projects. Ford was able to pivot their logistics, their supply chain management, to providing new products, personal protective equipment, hospital gowns, face masks, eye shields, in 3 weeks. General Motors was able to switch their production from assembling car parts to assembling ventilators in 3 weeks. Toyota did what Toyota did well. They asked the customer, what do you really want? The customer, in this case hospital, said, we want face shields. Toyota said, how do you want them delivered? The customer told them. Toyota designed a new face shield, made prototypes, showed it to the customer, got feedback, improved the prototypes, went into mass production with 3D printed tools. 3D printed tools wear out quickly. Toyota did not wait for metal tools like they normally would. They began shipping mass production parts inside 3 weeks with 3D printed tools, the stamp and die that make these face shields. When the metal tools did arrive, they switched over to the metal tools, and the 3D printed tools had not worn out yet. They entered mass production in 3 weeks and were able to sustain it at a quality bar the customers were happy with. Tesla did what Tesla did well. They designed new systems. Step one, they evaluated what are their capabilities. You can see the timeline on the right side. They said Tesla makes heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems for cars that has some similarities with ventilators. SpaceX makes life support systems for rockets that has some similarities with ventilators. They then met with arguably the top most advanced ventilator manufacturer on the planet and had an agreement to share the designs. Tesla then said, can we do better? In 3 weeks, they published the Sprint 2 Sprint Review online. The YouTube link is at the bottom of this slide. A screen capture of it is at the bottom right of this slide. And they showed a functioning new ventilator that is arguably the most advanced ventilator in the world. So they had improved the state of the art, arguably. They did that in 3 weeks. The timeline is on the right side. And look what happened to their stock price. Globally, the financial markets have more faith in companies that can innovate quickly than companies that focus mostly on cost reduction. Companies that show a pattern of innovation at a high speed are rewarded with growth. You can see a comparison of stock prices in the main part of this window in the center of the screen. And all stocks dropped when COVID-19 happened. But Tesla showed they were able to continue innovating even during COVID-19, making new advanced products even during COVID-19, and their stock price grew again the fastest. All the projects I just talked about were unlikely to succeed, but wildly successful anyway. Why? These projects suffered from a worst-case scenario of project management. They had changing requirements even late in development. They had no defined process and tools for the response. There were a lack of clear contracts and no agreed plan. And these projects still shipped 5,200% faster than business as usual with high customer satisfaction. Why? I conducted a study across 4 continents, more than 24 countries, with more than 3,500 office professionals, from military special forces teams to Fortune 50 companies, to manufacturing companies, to 5 of the wealthiest companies in the world, with 3,500 participants. Part of the study was, is there any difference in speed when people work on 1 project at once and work on 3 projects at once? And here's what I found. If people work on 3 projects in chunks, A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C, they finish the project in a certain length of time. If instead they work sequentially, only on project A, only on project B, only on project C, finishing them each in turn, A finishes 500% faster, B finishes 250% faster, C finishes 167% faster. So even project C finishes before project A would have. Now, interestingly, this is very similar to what Gerald Weinberg guessed, not a study, but guessed as a rule of thumb would happen when he created the table of context switching loss. It was very accurate, very close to accurate, compared to what we found in actual companies with actual executives, team members, business people. Paolo Samichelli is the author of the book Scrum for Hardware. Globally, he's an Agile coach, and he has been helping Italy emerge from COVID-19 crisis with executive-led Agile transformation. And what he's found is companies that aren't able to work in small isolated teams are shut down if anyone in the company has COVID-19 like symptoms. They have a forced quarantine for a week while they wait for 2 rounds of COVID-19 testing for accuracy. If the company can't verify that they didn't touch anyone else or didn't share parts or materials or tools with anyone else before they were disinfected, anyone who might have been contaminated also has to quarantine. That's making entire buildings at a time have to be shut down if someone gets a fever, even if they don't have COVID-19, but have COVID-19-like symptoms. What these companies are really asking for now is for Paolo to show them how to run effectively in small cross-functional teams. So if someone shows COVID-19-like symptoms, only 1 team has to quarantine and not the entire shift or the entire building. Suddenly, the Agile transformation is triggered across companies that didn't even have it on their radar before. They want T-shaped skills, cross-functional teams. They want the teams prioritizing their own business value, so they're training them in the product owner role and the scrum master role to help remove their own impediments. If teams have to have a lot of handoffs, they have to have a lot of disinfection steps in physical work. We can see this with Conway's Law from 1967. Conway said, if an organization makes a product, by looking at how that product's made, he could guess with reasonable accuracy how people communicated in that company that designed that product. If the product had decisions made first, and then quality tried to be added in later, and then supply chain brought in later to try to figure out cost reduction in the supply chain, after the first marketing plan was made and the business plan was made, it would show up as inefficiencies in the product. and single points of failure in the product. And it turns out that makes inefficiencies and single points of failure in the product design in the company as well. Here is a typical phase gate waterfall development plan. Let's say manufacturing supply chain is disrupted. Well, that means no projects can actually finish. We can't complete manufacturing and supply chain. So in a traditional company, when people are divided by silo or phase or skill, what happens is people then multitask. They starting other projects to try to make more business plans and more validated robust product and more field testing and more technical services plan. But without manufacturing and supply chain, they can't finish any new projects. And by multitasking, they reduce the speed by more than 500%, even if there are only 3 projects. It's even higher if there's more than 3 projects. Some of these companies have 27 projects in flight at a time per group. They get effectively 0 done in a year. And this creates the need for an agile transformation in the company. And the quotations we saw from CEOs before saying what we want is speed. That's why we want agility. The entire company is impacted if they're working in phases. We have shift-wide quarantine, facility-wide quarantine, all work impacted, and that's for a coronavirus situation. But this is true for any disruption. The solution is Justice's Law. Justice's Law, I state, the modules of the product, the modules of the system define the structure of the organization. Here's what that looks like. I started this in 2006. The product I wanted to build was a car, an environmentally friendly race car. It was divided into 8 modules. Each module has a team that independently owns the project. The definition of these modules is they need to be able to be built, tested, and deployed independently of each other so they can all be built at the same time. So that's how these are sliced. They're independent on each other. They have an interface, and if the teams on both sides of the interface agree, they can change the interface at any time because they won't be disrupting each other. No one team can change an interface alone. Then they build, and they can change the interface as they need to go if they both agree. To renegotiate that interface, I use a pattern that Jim Copleen wrote, Meta Scrum. So we have module teams working independently. When I started working with companies in Silicon Valley, I found they support these teams with company as a service teams, a funding team that works with investors and investment groups, gourmet team to make sure there's excellent food available to all teams every 3 to 4 hours, 24 hours a day, coffee teams to make sure there is world-class coffee available 24 hours a day, made live by baristas and baristos. This is normal in Silicon Valley to keep morale high. Facilities teams to make sure there are safe places to work that are always open and they have the right tools, the right amount of power, the right amount of bandwidth. There's not a separate procurement group anymore. There's not a separate management group anymore. It's not needed for speed in these organizations. The modules of the product define the structure of the company. There's not a separate mechanical engineering group or a software engineering group. It's what's needed per module. And the teams self-regulate, they self-manage that staff mix and their training skills. In this case, if one team is disrupted or affected by any reason, it only affects their module. All other module teams continue integrating with the previous generation of the affected module until another team takes up that module or the first affected team recovers. This is what's called an anti-fragile system or a highly available system, whereas a phase gate waterfall process is not. This also helps with funding. If the company has $100 million coming in, that's distributed across the module teams appropriately by value to the business or cost to execute. If there's a disruption and less money's coming in, we do the same thing. We run the Meta Scrum pattern and we reallocate the available funds across the top priority projects. This happens smoothly and easily, and it has nothing to do with how many mechanical engineers do we need, and do we need to lay off headcount of a certain skill or a certain phase. It's simply reapportioned to module teams. Then self-organization happens where people allocate themselves to module teams at the appropriate level of funding, and they're allowed to opt out of the company if there's not enough funding to meet their salary satisfaction. In a crisis, Agile companies save jobs. This, I believe, is important because I believe the purpose of a company is to create as many jobs as responsible and help those people have healthy, happy lives. This maps perfectly to what Henrik Nyberg produced with Spotify and what Paul Tacken conducted with ING Bank, which has been advertised as the most successful Agile transformation of all time by Deloitte and by McKinsey. And Paul led that as their chief Agile coach. Here's what this looks like. We have a product. The product has modules. Each module has a team or a team of teams, a group scrum. They have release goals. That way they can coordinate through their meta scrum. They coordinate skills. So every team needs to do some level of mechanical engineering, some level of embedded software, some level of marketing, some level of skills training. Those people meet in communities of practice or more formally in quality circles. For more information on that, please read my book in process, The Scrum Master, working title, The Certified Scrum Master. We'll see if I can continue to use that title or not. That's a conversation with the Scrum Alliance, and we'll see. Volkmar Denner called my mobile phone. This started with an executive session with Volkmar Denner directly, several phone calls first, and then meeting in person and working one-on-one together, Volkmar and I. Then an executive group session with all the executives at Bosch, and then a series of group sessions with all the executives at Bosch and myself in smaller groups, then hardware sprints. These hardware sprints also included software. Here's one on the left in sprint 1, a team put an existing Bosch part with a custom bracket on the front of a train and got customer feedback, a freight locomotive. Here are the next 4 sprints. This is 5 weeks total. The teams produced new hardware with new software every sprint with customer feedback tested in the field every sprint, and in 5 sprints had a part for sale. Siemens, very similar process. They had a piece of laboratory equipment, a very complex piece of laboratory equipment they'd been working on for 20 years, and they wanted to finish it. All hardware design staff went through a hardware certified Scrum Master class, a certified Scrum Master class with the extreme manufacturing hardware endorsement taught by me. That was across 5 locations. Then a hardware Scrum Master class and product owner class for all the people who do procurement, vendor management, and contract writing. Then a leadership workshop on how to manage their new Agile organization. This was the chain of events for the Agile transformation at Siemens. Toyota took a different approach. They created a new company entirely owned by Toyota called Toyota Research, Innovation, and Advanced Development, TRIAD. They said it will be easier to create this new Agile culture inside a new company than inside Toyota itself. So they found this new company in Tokyo with a new building, totally separate campus, but wholly owned by Toyota. They hired a Google employee, a former Google employee, to be their CEO, so they would have Silicon Valley DNA. Then they put their next CEO, Daisuke Toyota, into this company. And they trained everyone in the company, 100% of staff, as certified Scrum Masters. Most were also trained as product owners. Sorry, they're all trained as Scrum Masters, and then some of them were also trained as product owners. Most of them were trained also with hardware by myself. Then an executive workshop was conducted, how all these executives will need to function, how they'll run Meta Scrum, how they'll run Scrum of Scrums, how they'll run all those together, this thing called Group Scrum. And the concept is for the next CEO of Toyota to take the experience running this company to Toyota Global in 10 years. Now, 10 years is a long time. That's the strategy. That's the method to roll this out across Toyota. Volkswagen had a different flavor of the problem. They had had Dieselgate, and executive leadership wanted to know, why were there not more whistleblowers? Why was there a fear to speak up in the company? A retrospective was first conducted with the C-levels and the board of Volkswagen. Why is there a fear to speak up in Volkswagen? That's not a culture they want. Second, why are we not developing faster? As you saw from Herbert Diess, the CEO. After the retrospective, they also created a new Agile organization inside Volkswagen. They applied full-time expert executive Agile coaches, and top executives from Volkswagen transferred over to this new Agile company inside Volkswagen. They then hired in other people from the Volkswagen company to participate in this pure play Agile organization, this think tank. And this started their Agile transformation. What I've learned is when we're making hardware, designing, analyzing, building, testing, and deploying hardware in 1 week sprints, you gotta have a huge amount of fun or people do get tired and they ask to go back to the waterfall. It's too exhausting. If we make it a party, if we finish every day with a party, if we make it like a party during the day, people wanna do this forever. I'm not kidding at all. Here's a real product owner. They're working with 4 teams, making hardware parts in parallel. They're designing and building and integrating multiple hardware parts an hour. That's how fast they're going in this factory. Here you see a group scrum board of 4 teams. This is actual live. You see their velocity, and you see the product owners drinking white wine, Weiss wine. That's required to go this fast sustainably, or whatever makes you have fun in a healthy way. I'm not saying you have to drink alcohol, but I do think the culture of saying alcohol is okay, it's okay for this to be a party, whether you have it or not, is required for this to work. It's got to be like Oktoberfest every day. Using this method and working with pro Agile coaches globally, the fastest I've seen this happen is building a new car in 27 minutes. That included some new design and some in testing, some validation. The method to make this fast is if something is a standard operating procedure, a repeatable task, that's for robots. That's for robots to build, or if it's software, for automation and scripts to do. Groups of humans handle all the creative work, all the stuff that isn't a standard operating procedure. And that's what brings the speed. It really is automation. Now, the speed of change comes from rapid change robots, robots with a quick speed of reprogramming. And the teams become experts in reprogramming the robots. And this is only responsible if you have testing in the line. So we have test-driven development 100% of the time. For more information on this, please see my book, The Scrum Master, or take my Scrum Master class, which is all about this. It includes hardware and the hardware endorsement. I've had a chance to do this in jets on the F-22 with the F-35 team, the Saab Gripen, for Boeing, the new model aircraft, their next commercial aircraft, and Mitsubishi with their regional jet, their space jet. This does require different tools. I recommend the tool stack from Markforged for metals and composites. They even have testing built into the system. Next steps I would recommend: if you own a business, identify a member of your board of directors to be a process coach for the business. Then add process coaches to your teams. If you are a member of a team, ask your process coach where you can gain efficiencies in your team. If you are a process coach or a scrum master, identify the value stream map of your business and sharpen your skills at every opportunity. I'd like to invite all of you to be co-authors with me. I've just recently finished a business book, working title The Certified Scrum Master. Certified Scrum Master is trademarked by the Scrum Alliance. I don't know if I get to use that term or not. We're in negotiation. It may end up being titled The Scrum Master. Both are fine. The book is 211 pages as a business text. I've aimed for it to be a world-class business book, and I think I did it. I think it's a great book. I've used Agile Publishing with Vasco Duarte because I think the way they run this publishing company is the real right way. And the method I want to use is to invite 100 people to sign up at the link below if you want to be able to read the book in advance at no cost and contribute to it. I want people to make edits because I know the book will get better with edits, and I want people to change it because I know the book will get better with change. Currently, I'm the only author. I don't want that to be the case. I want there to be 100 authors. So it's open for 100 people. Please add good content and help me make it better. I've never had an idea that didn't get better working with a group. Please sign up at the link below. I think you're awesome. Let's go do great Scrum.